We're going to start with Alex Anthopoulos just because I know that's the one you guys care about the most. And I've seen all those reports out there. I know they are out there about the Braves only having $5 million to spend, right? And that may be true, right? We're going to talk about that in a second, but it's not confirmed, first of all. It could be a possibility. I think there is certainly reason to think that the Braves are limited financially, but so is every other team. Every team is going through it. I mean, think about last year, right? The COVID season. You had no attendance revenue. You had very little merchandising revenue, you would think. So there wasn't a whole lot, going on for the Braves financially. So, of course, you're going to have a drop-off. But I think that the Braves are getting a little bit too much focus. I think a lot of teams are going through it. The Braves are probably possibly the only contender really going through it like this, but I would doubt that as well. Just because they're not spending money like the Padres doesn't mean they're struggling. I think they fixed what they needed to fix in starting pitching, right? They've pretty much already dealt with that. Their bullpen's going to fix itself, I believe, and their offense didn't need any help. So I don't think the Braves really need that much. Now, their depth could. Of course, you're seeing a lot of bench moves right now. You're seeing a lot of shifting at the bench, but that's by design, and I don't think there's any problem with that. But when I saw Alex Anthopoulos came on to talk with Nick Cellini and Chris Domino, I had to listen. I had to know what he was going to talk about and what questions they were going to ask him. But on the report of the $5 million flexibility, I'm just going to give you the bullet points. He basically said, I love the way he started off with, well, you guys know me. When it comes to payrolls, I never disclose numbers. It impacts us in negotiations. Now, it's funny he says this, because I don't know if you guys caught wind of what's going on with the Mariners right now, but their GM pretty much disclosed everything to a Rotary Club. Pretty much put all the dirty laundry out there about holding guys back in the minors for an extra year of control. You're not supposed to say those things. So I think it's kind of funny the way he started off. But to focus more on the Braves, he also said, you're always going to want more. No team is flawless. He even mentioned the LA Dodgers. He said that team was not flawless, and he would bet money that they would have liked to add a couple more pieces down the road. In terms of the payroll, he credited Terry McGurk. We're going to talk about that in a second, but he credited him in saying that the payroll last year was the highest in the organization's history. Okay, last year. So they have plenty to work with, and they don't have to get higher and higher every year. Sometimes you already have what you need in a lot of aspects. I think the Braves are going to be just fine. He finished off by saying that, it's our job, being the front office, it's our job to get us back to the World Series and build a great team overall. So I think it says a lot about Alex Anthopoulos as a GM that even when the pressure is on, when all eyes are on him and the Braves payroll, he continues to say we have plenty to work with. Later in this interview, like I said, he credited Terry McGurk of Liberty Media. And Liberty Media takes a lot of flack from you guys. I don't particularly like to do it, but they take a lot from fans. Just you should spend more, you should invest more in the Braves. But I think the fact that Alex Anthopoulos continues to credit them should make you feel a lot better about it. He doesn't have to say that. With that said, he's not speaking out on the accuracy of the number, being $5 million. And I would prefer that over, him disclosing everything, because I bet it does affect them in negotiations. I'm sure it does. And, if you haven't seen that Mariners clip, by the way, go watch it. You'll be more proud to have AA running the Braves than you ever have before. Chris Domino actually asked him about the rumor getting out, the $5 million, whether or not it's true or not. The question was directed at, are you having a discussion within about having those conversations outside and things getting leaked? And, Alex Anthopoulos basically said, I don't mind this getting out per se, and we're not really, everybody knows where we're going. Everybody knows what the rules are. And to be honest with you, I think it was obvious. And he kind of insinuated this. I think it was obvious that the Braves were probably taking, a little bit of a financial step back. I thought they would still add another piece, but he said that we backloaded Ozuna's contract for a reason. And I thought it was for a reason. I thought it was so they could go get more pieces, and I still think that's the case. Whether they be Shane Green, whether they be another bench bat, whatever the case may be, I still think they did that for a reason. And he said, obviously, our payroll is going to be lower in 2021 after having no attendance revenue. So it's pretty simple, right? And what he's saying here to me is simply that that move should have indicated to most people that there are some limitations. And I mentioned that at one point, but I took it at that time more of a let's go all out approach, more so than a let's step back. And I still think that they're trying to have some flexibility to where they can make those moves if needed. But either way, the approach was to obviously conserve as much money as possible, to be as flexible as possible moving forward throughout the next season following the COVID season. So say what you want. The Braves are continuing to impress me, and they're continuing to make those AA patented under the radar moves. And I think they're underrated moves. Jake Lamb, Phillip Ervin, Travis Snyder, we're going to talk about that in a little later. They're not the Padres moves, okay? They don't have to be. The Padres have to compete. They have to compete with the LA Dodgers, World Series champion LA Dodgers, okay? They're in the same exact token as the Mets. The Mets are, of course, spending money. That's because the Mets have to compete with the Braves. They're in the same division. The Padres are in the same division as the LA Dodgers. So that's why they're in an arms race with the LA Dodgers. And I get the Mets and the Padres making those big purchases because they're competing with organizations that have built from the ground up, if you ask me, the right way, the most full way, if you look at it, obviously that's going to be more successful long term. And we're going to talk about something in a second that Alex Anthopoulos said that I really appreciated, and it shares the mindset I do. A lot of you guys probably wonder why I have so much, support of Alex Anthopoulos because of the way he handles himself. It's a lot like how I would handle this, if I had a budget, or how I would try to handle it. But the Padres are, of course, in the same division as the Dodgers, and one of those teams goes to the postseason. The other may get a wild card game. That's the game, that's what they're going for. The Padres, they're either going for postseason, wild card game, or bust. Okay, so if I was picking right now, one of those teams are going to be a wild card, I think, but the other is probably going to be in the postseason because that's how good they are. And I think the Padres are better than the Mets. I think they're right there with the Braves at the moment based on the purchases they've made. And I think the Dodgers, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Padres are all right there. I know we've heard all that talk about the Mets. I'm not buying it because I've heard it before. And yeah, they spent a lot of money on Lindor, but that's one player, and I know one player can make a big impact, but I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I have got to see some results. There's more to it than one player. And I know the Mets have built a little bit, but I still don't think they're as well built as the Braves, in my personal opinion. But to me, the Braves, in my opinion, have improved for the 162-game format. In a 60-game format, you can get away with no pitching. We saw it last year. They did it. Okay? Almost went to a World Series with really 2 solidified starting pitchers and a third kind of right there, and then the rest was bullpen. You can't do that in a 162. So I think that they've improved in that regard. I think they're more of a full team. And who knows, if they're relatively successful mid-season and need a piece, who's to say Liberty Media won't splurge a little bit and give Alex Anthopoulos a little boost, if need be? And I think he's earned that trust. Reason being moves like this, right? He's not trying to just spend money out, while he can. He's handling his money responsibly. And I think he's earned that trust because of it. But to me, this isn't the first time this has come up. And to me, it's also a fundamental part of how AA runs a club. I like that, especially for a market the size of the Braves. I think it works well. I think it's the most successful way the Braves are going to operate. But also, he said this and I really liked it. We continue to get unbelievable resources. By Terry McGurk specifically. If you don't know who Terry McGurk is, he's the owner of Liberty Media. He's a very big part of the Braves' financial plan. He's basically giving credit to Liberty Media, and that's something I don't think happens enough in baseball and with the Braves. I don't think you guys hear that enough. And I'm not saying you guys, but a lot of fans give a lot of flack to Liberty Media, just unbeknownst when the Braves don't make a huge move. Well, it's got to be Liberty Media. I think that's unfair, and I think it's unfortunate. But they asked him, further questions. They asked him about, anything you've wondered about. Freddie Freeman's extension and coaching turnover. If you didn't know this, Snicker's contract actually runs out after this year as well. So in a nutshell, Double A said that the players come first. We got to have those players at spring training. Got to get them ready. In terms of Freeman, both sides want it to happen. It just takes time. Sounds pretty familiar. He said basically the exact same line about Marcell Ozuna. So I would not worry about Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman is going to return, and I would be more than surprised if he did not. But he also had to answer questions about the lineup, right? The Braves lineup was stacked last season, and no DH this year. Obviously throws a little bit of a curveball at him, but he basically said that he is a believer of the best players getting high up in the lineup. Ronald Acuna, number 1. Freddie Freeman, number 2. Marcell Ozuna, number 3. Travis d'Arnaud, number 4. And you move on to get as many at-bats. But, Freddie moved up to the 2 hole last season, and he's MVP this season.